Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. I think we're on day 27 of the Nursing School Mindset Edit. Good morning, Amanda. So pop in the chat. Let me know that you are here. I'm really excited about what we're talking about today. So much good info. So I made a survey in my Facebook group about how do nursing students with ADHD manage that and thrive in nursing school. I wanted your best tips so that I could pull them together and share them with you all. So I'm super excited. Thank you to everyone who participated and shared your knowledge, your insight, your experience. I learned so much, and I'm so thankful for you. So thank you again for doing that. Hi there, Sally. Glad you are here. Okay. We've got this broken out into categories, and this might take a while to get through. Don't worry if you have to leave or if you miss something. I'm going to put all of this on the Straight A Nursing website. So you'll have it kind of in written form and sorted out by category. Okay. The first and most overarching thing that students shared as they're going through nursing school with ADHD is the massive need, critical need, I would say, on being really, really organized. Okay. So using a planner was brought up over and over and over again. So using a planner of some kind, it doesn't matter really what type you use as long as it's one that you use and that resonates with you and works for you. Some students used a big monthly calendar so they could see everything, and that's what worked for them. Some used the planner that I make for students, which has monthly and weekly. Another student sent me a great picture of, she kind of took a chore chart that you would use for kids and your family, but turned it into a week by week, big, awesome, color-coded calendar of everything she has to do for school. So that was awesome to see. So if you have not yet started using a planner or you're not sure if it will work for you, I did a whole live about using a planner for nursing school. Watch that as kind of an intro into how to use a planner, how to prioritize and use time blocking. Okay, so that was something huge. And the reason that it works so well for students with ADHD is because trying to remember everything that you have to do takes up a ton of processing capacity in your brain, and it just uses up energy and causes huge distractions. So if you've got it written down, it's in your planner, then it can kind of get out of that circling mode in your brain so that you can focus on what you need to focus on. A lot of students used a master list, like we talk about in my Thrive Guide, like I talk about in my boot camp, and found something like that really helpful, where everything you're working on for the whole semester is in one big master document, and you can check things off as you go. So lists were the other thing that was really, really important. Now, some students made lists for the week or for the month, but I think most often it was for the week, and whiteboards were mentioned many, many times. So having a big visual board with your to-dos on there really helped them to retain and refocus back in on what needed to get done. So that was really cool. One student pointed out that it was also very important to indicate what times things are due, setting alarms, because just missing an assignment time, if it's due by 10 p.m. and you turn it in at 10:15 p.m., you're going to lose points. So just staying super, super detailed with that as well. Other students talked about color coding in their planner, or on their whiteboard or their chart system or whatever it is, their Google Calendar. Maybe a different color for each class would be helpful for you if color resonates and helps you focus. And then the last thing about planning, everybody, is you have to plan your planning. So put time on your weekly schedule, on your weekly to-do list, whatever it is that says plan out next week or plan out tomorrow, so that it's on there and you know you're doing that activity, okay? So that was all about planning. And I just want to pop up here what Amanda says, because she says, diagnosed at 35, You just thought you weren't smart. Absolutely not true. Having to work harder does not indicate intelligence. It just builds your resilience. I absolutely agree, Amanda. You started using the computer system and the planner, and they were game changers. Fantastic. So, Amanda, I think you're in boot camp, and we talked about that in boot camp, how to do the digital files. That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that feedback. Okay, so that was planning. Okay, so that would be a key theme, something that underlies all of nursing school, right? Getting into that habit. Okay, the next thing that came up a lot was routines and having consistent routines in place. A lot of students who responded to the survey said that they rely on their routines to ensure they get the things done that they need to get done. So, something that came up a lot was having a consistent morning routine that incorporates the most important things you can do to set yourself up for success. And one student had a great app to share called Habitica, and I just glanced at it. It looks really cool. It's an app that you can put in like the habits or the things that you want to do on a daily or weekly basis or what have you. And there's gamification built into it. So maybe you get like um, some kind of acknowledgement for completing habit streaks and things like that. I haven't dove completely into it, but this student said it was game changing for her and just felt good to cross things off that list, even if it was something like shower, because maybe there are days when you just don't feel like it, but it's on the list and you're going to do it, right? Maybe you feel like blowing off exercise or taking the time to put your salad together for lunch. But if it's on there, on your habit tracking app, you're more inclined to do it. So she swore by that. It's called Habitica. Okay, check that out. Another thing students said helped them was setting up the next day the night before so that you have as least amount of chaos and disruption and disorganization in the morning, because mornings are busy, especially if you're getting kids together or trying to get out of the house and what have you. So a command center or something like that that's near the front door, so that as you're leaving, everything you need for your day is there. Your water bottle, your backpack, your clinical bag, you know, um, your lunch, whatever it is, it's all right there in one place in this like command center area. Your car keys, your phone, et cetera, et cetera. So that was something that students said was helpful for them. As far as doing routines, getting into the habit of doing things, a lot of students said they use the heck out of alarms, either alarms on their phone or their digital watch or in their digital planning system. An alarm that gets you up at the same time every day. An alarm that is like time to get in the shower so that your morning stays like with that forward momentum, right? An alarm, okay, now it's time to head out the door if you're going to get to class on time or get the kids to school on time or what have you. Really great way to make sure mornings especially stay on track, but you could use them throughout the day. Let's say you've done your planning and you know that you're going to do 90 minutes on one activity and then 90 minutes on another. You can have alarms that say, okay, time to switch, time to move over to doing, studying for what have you. So alarms came up quite a bit. Another student had a really fun idea that I loved where they have a playlist. And I saw this in more than one location, a playlist for their morning. So they would have certain songs. They'd start their playlist when they got up and they knew that, okay, like these first 3 songs were for showering and doing my hair and, getting dressed. And then the next song was when they would be preparing breakfast. And then the next song was when they're getting their stuff together to leave. Like, I thought that was really great. I saw it more than once. I loved that idea. I'm going to try that one. It's going to be heavy on the David Bowie. I'm just saying. Okay. Now, productivity was another kind of area that came up a lot when I surveyed the students. And being productive, basically, it just means getting the work done in the amount of time that you've allotted for it, right? So if you've done your planning, you've got a certain number of hours or whatever to get certain tasks done. And many students with ADHD utilize the Pomodoro technique, which I've talked about many, many times. And so the Pomodoro technique involves identifying a specific thing that you're going to get done, like a work session goal. And then I think traditionally it's a 25-minute focus session. And then there's a 5-minute break, and then another 25-minute focus session and a break. And that repeats for I believe it's 4 focus sessions. You can make it whatever you want, by the way, but this is like the traditional method. 4 focus sessions, and then after that fourth one, a longer break, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever works for you. So I use an app when I've really got to power through and just zone in and get something done. I use an app called Focus Keeper. I think it's free in the App Store. I don't know that they have an Android version, but if they don't, I promise you there is a Pomodoro app out there for Android as well. Focus Keeper is great. You can set your focus sessions to be whatever length of time you want. There's a clock ticking sound you can have on. I think off is better because it's a little bit distracting. It's just really nice. It's just a simple little app that you can utilize to have that discipline of those focused sessions, okay? And then some students find it really helpful with those focus sessions to have like a reward. So something to look forward to on that 15, 30-minute, that bigger break that you'll get. Like, maybe that's getting up and making yourself a favorite, your favorite cup of tea, or going and spending 10 minutes playing with the dog, or just something to look forward to that's kind of like a reward for really staying focused during those sessions. Rochelle, that app is called Focus Keeper, okay? As far as productivity goes, other students talked about background noise really helping them. Generally would be instrumental music that people talked about, not loudly, but just in the background. No vocals, because vocals can be kind of distracting, or even just a white noise machine was brought up more than once. And let me see. Oh, another student brought up the importance of doing things early if you can, getting ahead. Being ahead of things is so much better than trying to catch up if you are behind. So that was brought up more than once. So if your instructor has assignments posted a little ahead of time and you can get to it, the student suggested doing that because it was really helpful for them. And then the last thing about productivity that came up a few times was know yourself and know what time of day you're most productive, and do your most challenging, complex, difficult subjects at that time. So maximize your own, productivity zones of genius. Okay. All right. So that was productivity. And next came up kind of in the same vein, but enhancing focus and minimizing distractions. This was a big one. So students had a ton of great tips for this. So one of them was, a lot of people said when studying, put your phone on either airplane mode, or how about in another room completely? It's such a huge temptation and distractor. There are apps that you set them up to block your ability to visit certain websites, use certain apps for a certain period of time. And one is called Freedom. I've used that before because I get easily distracted by things online. Another one is called Self-Control. There's a bunch of these out there. Basically, you tell it, I know with the Freedom one, you can say specifically, like, I want you to block shopping websites, social media websites. You can kind of categorize the type of website you want it to block. I want you to block these apps, and then it won't let you do it. And you go to click to that thing, and this like pretty green screen comes up to say, you're free from these distractions. Now get back to work. So it's really cool. If you're using a tablet, like an iPad or a tablet of some kind for school, which a lot of students do, consider just not having any distracting apps on there so that you don't even have to deal with it, okay? Something I advocate for all the time is getting to be the boss of your email, not letting it be the boss of you. So when we leave our email app open all the time, raise your hand if every time you hear that incoming message alert, you stop what you're doing, or you're at least pulled out of it mentally and go to check your email. That's letting your email control your day and your schedule. So, what I like to do is set specific times of day to check my email. So, one student said for her, not checking it first thing was better because, email will have things in it, maybe tasks that you need to do, things you need to take care of, and it was distracting for her. So maybe setting your email check time as a very deliberate time of day when your work is complete. Okay, so that is a huge one. It can make a big difference in your productivity and your ability to focus and get things done. Okay. Setting reminder alarms really helps you kind of set it and forget it. Again, we talked about this earlier. If you've got like in your head, I've got to stop studying at 3 because I got to go pick up the kids from school, you're kind of always checking the clock, right? Is it time to go? Is it time to go to get the kids? And you don't really focus. Or students with ADHD can also have that tendency to like mega focus on something, and then you look up at the clock and it's 4:30 and your poor kids are still at school. So setting an alarm so you can kind of set it and forget it, and you know that that alarm's going to go off at 3 o'clock, and then when that alarm goes off, time to go get the kiddos, right? So using alarms for things like that just means less stuff is swirling around in your brain. When taking tests, students talked about focusing on tests, and some issues that came up with testing was uh, maybe reading too quickly and missing important keywords or key phrases. So, reminding yourself to slow down when taking tests. Reading the questions out loud is really helpful if you can. Probably can't do that in a testing room. Even with online testing, with all the kind of bizarre and super strict proctoring, I don't even know if that's possible. Find out. Maybe you can get an accommodation so that you can read your test questions out loud, but that can really minimize the risk of you skipping over potentially important words or phrases. One student used a fidget tool during test taking as that physical reminder to slow down when reading her test questions. Yeah, I agree, Liz. It's hard to slow down when tests are timed. You'll, my best advice to that is the more tests you take, you'll probably get more of a feel for how much time you have to answer the questions, right? And just notice if you're rushing. Like there's a difference between rushing and reading at like a steady pace, right? Maybe not necessarily read at a super slow pace, but just avoid rushing. You know what I mean? So trying to look at it that way where you're not speed reading the question, but you're reading the question at a reasonable rate so that you pick up on those words. But yeah, I know that timed test thing is just another thing that kind of amps up that anxiety and difficult for focusing. You've got a minute per question. Yeah, they tend to do that because the NCLEX is timed, and I don't know what the time is for NCLEX questions, but does it? I think if you got all the questions, would it equal out to be about a minute per question? There's some rationale for why they do that. Okay, if you're attending in-person class, a lot of students said sitting in the front row really helped them because they're less distracted by what's going on around them. So that helped them focus. One student said if electronics are distracting for you, write your notes on paper. Don't even pull out an electronic device. Just use paper. Earplugs were mentioned multiple times. Noise canceling headphones were mentioned multiple times, just in case noise is a distractor for you. Another tip was visual distraction. So, can you have your desk set up so that only the task you're working on is what's out on your desk? All your other books, your other notes, your other binders, your other anything is put away, and you only have what you need to get that task done out at any given time. And then what was another one? Oh, yes, the later list. So I don't know about you, but I get really distracted because my brain will start thinking about, oh, stuff I need to do later, things I need to do tomorrow, next week. And I think, oh, I'm going to forget to do that. Have a little notepad next to your desk, the later list, where you just quickly jot down the things to do later so you can get them out of your head. They stop swirling and you can focus, okay? All right, there's so much here. We need a coffee break. Okay. Another thing that students found super helpful was creating an ADHD friendly study space. So, one student said, I like to make sure I have everything that I need at my desk so I'm not distracted by getting up to go get other things. So, this was stuff like a water bottle, snacks. Make sure you have your pens, your pencils, your highlighters, your notebooks, your headphones, whatever you need to have a productive study session, fidget tools, reference books, study materials, etc. Other students swore by a computer riser in their study space because sitting the whole time maybe not the most effective, so alternating between sitting and standing was super helpful. And then having a space where all you do in that space is study and work on schoolwork so that it signals your brain when I'm in this space, I'm at work on school stuff. Okay. And then one student said she found it really helpful to have multiple seating modalities. So some work at her desk, some work at the kitchen table, some work on the sofa. So if that works for you, maybe give that a try. Okay. How are we doing, guys? Everybody hanging in there? I've got a few more categories to get through. There's a lot. I was just blown away by all the tips you guys shared. Many students zoned in on tips surrounding maximizing your learning style. So, many students talked about interactive and engaged learning as a way to stay mentally connected. So, one great resource for this that I don't think a lot of students utilize enough is your online resources that come with your really expensive textbooks that you buy. Those textbooks often have an online access code. And I don't even think it was probably second semester or later when I realized the amazing resources available with that very interactive type stuff, lots of visual things, um, like matching things, diagram things, case study things, fill in the blank things, like really engaged and interactive learning. So I love using things like that. So if you haven't used those online access codes to check out what your publisher of your book has to offer, take a minute and go check that out. You might find it really super helpful. A lot of students, very visual, and so found that writing notes in different colored pens or pencils really helped. One student said it kind of tricked her brain into thinking of her notes as art and not just a bunch of words. And for her, that was super helpful. Lots of students said they learned the material best by teaching it to someone else. So that's a really great way to stay really engaged, especially with complex topics. And it's just a really active way to learn. And I talk about this all the time. Some students really need that physical activity component while they're learning. So this could be using fidget tools, highlighting as you go. If you guys are highlighting, be intentional about it. I talked about this recently. Get a color coding system together for your highlighting so it's not just willy-nilly. I like to use, I don't have my highlighters here, but I like to use like a certain color for all things related to medications, a certain color for all things related to signs and symptoms of a disease, a certain color for time intervals and lengths and distances, and another color for lab values. Like have an intentional method for how you use your highlighting. One student said she would knit while she was reading, and that helped her to focus on learning as she was reading. So I thought those were great. Color coding also came up a lot, especially if you're very visual, drawing out concepts. One student said she would use different handwriting styles, and that was another way to keep her brain really engaged because she was a very visual, creative type person. So some good tips there. And another student who knew that she had a tendency to every now and then kind of zone out during lecture would look ahead of time at what was going to be discussed and then use the straight A nursing latte template style thing and try to jot down a few things on that template and then take that to her lecture or her online class and then fill in the rest while lecture is happening as a way to stay really engaged, filling in those gaps as she went. Okay, a great tip, you guys, which I did not even think of, was to utilize closed captioning when you're watching videos. That's just another uh, way to get that sensory input that for many students found really, really helpful. You might need to request closed captioning from your school as an accommodation, or you could simply ask your professor to turn on captioning for Zoom. Maybe it's an option when you're viewing a Zoom to turn on captioning. That it is a possibility with Zoom. Okay. Rochelle, not aware of the template. It's on the website, Rochelle. If you search for latte, it should come up, or you can just make your own. It's not like you have to use a template. It's just super simple. So go to the website, search for latte. I talked about it on the 4th, if you want to go back and check out that video. Okay, good. All right. Some students talked about using goofy stories, songs, mnemonic devices, whatever it is. Doesn't matter if it's completely silly. If it helps you remember information, go for it. Okay. Another really great tip is as you're learning a concept, try to guess what the test questions will be for that concept. Jot them down. And now, as you get through that whole module, you've basically made a study guide for your exam. So students said that was super helpful. Recording yourself talking through your notes, listening to them later, listening to them while doing something physical came up over and over again. And a lot of students with ADHD benefit from having like their books read to them. So your ebooks could have a read aloud option. There are machine readers. These are accommodations that you might be able to get from your school as well. Okay, so that is a ton about maximizing your learning style. So many things. Okay, and then we're going to talk about, let's see, we talked about that. Okay, so some just utilizing your resources really efficiently. So check out what your school has to offer. So this could be the Disability Center. It might be called something else, Disability Student Center, whatever it is. There's some kind of office at your school. So find out what they need, as early as possible. You want to get that taken care of. There may be a writing center that may help you if that's something that you struggle with, tutoring services, and mental health counseling. So find out what resources your school has. Use the heck out of them, you guys. They are there for you. And even if you don't need tutoring, it might be helpful to schedule the sessions anyway, because the benefit of having that focused work session can be really, really impactful and really great. And then somebody mentioned a YouTube channel called How to ADHD, and she said that it had fantastic suggestions and fantastic tools. So you guys check that out if you don't yet know about it. How to ADHD. I'll see if I can find a link to it. I haven't checked it out yet, but she said it was absolute gold. Okay, and then in clinical, specifically, people talked about how they manage in clinical, and lists and routines are going to be your BFFs in a clinical situation. It's, you could have a whole like thought process of what you need to do when you go in the patient's room, but then when you get in there, you forget all of it because you get distracted by something else that's happening. That happens all the time. All I say to that is what I would do, especially when I was new, is I would keep a list, like a little Post-it note. And on that little Post-it note, I would jot down at least 5 things that I was going to do the next time I went into the patient's room so that I could, make use of my time more efficiently and not forget the things that I needed to get done. And then I would take that in there, and there was my list of all the things I was going to do, because it's really frustrating and clinical to go in a room, forget why you went in there in the first place, right? Or you get in there to do, you do one of the things, but then you forget the 5 others, and then you're in and out, in and out, in and out. That's really inefficient and tough on your time management in clinical. So making lists, no shame in that at all. And then routines would be the other thing in clinical that are going to help you so much. I talk about this in my book. I'm pretty sure I talk about it in boot camp as well, is have a start of shift routine so that you do the same things at the start of your clinical shift. Have a first assessment routine so that you do the same things that first time you go in to assess the patient, okay? Have an end of shift routine. Have a before I leave the room routine. Like when I step away from the bed, okay, before I leave the room, I do this kind of routine check of everything. In the ICU where I worked for many years, that was things um, like if they were intubated, let's say the patient was intubated and restrained, are there restraints on? Can the patient possibly reach their ET tube? Because yes, patients can still self-extubate while restrained. Um, is my Foley bag not touching the floor? Have I checked for the urine output? Are all the numbers on the monitor showing up as I expect them to be? Just kind of like this general overview of the room and the patient before I would leave. So having routines, game changing, okay? Using a run sheet, something that I also advocate that students do. I still use a run sheet. How many years later? A run sheet is basically kind of just a general outline of how your shift is going to go. Has things on it like when your meds are due, when timed interventions are due, when you're going to do things, so that you have a consistent workflow throughout the day. And I have an example of a run sheet on my website. If you go to the resources area, you can find it there. And then just have a little notepad. Those little spiral bound notepads where they flip up and you can just stick it in your pocket? Keep one of those with you at all times. Jot down the vital signs if for some reason you can't get them into the computer right away. Maybe the wow isn't working. Jot them down because I promise you're not going to remember them. Jot down the patient's requests. The other day at work, I think this poor girl had to tell me 3 times that she was cold and I felt so bad. I kept intending to get her a blanket, but I had a situation happening with my other patient that massively distracted me, and I felt horrible. If I had just written down blanket, I would have remembered that. Maybe the RN gives you instructions, wants you to go into the room and do 2 or 3 things. Write them down because I don't know about you, but when someone's giving me a list of things to do, and especially if it's new, really good chance I'm going to forget about half of it. So write it down, okay? There's no shame in that. What gets written down gets done, you guys. Okay, the last 2 areas, medication was another one that came up. This is not the time to experiment unless you are doing it with your physician's guidance and advice, right? I saw a couple of studies that say that 50% of college students stop taking their ADHD medication when they get to school. There could be lots of reasons for that. It could be access to care, maybe not checking in with their physician as often. So have a plan. If you do take medication, have a plan for continuing to get your medication as prescribed and staying in touch with your physician. If you have to set up a refill schedule, set up regular check-ins with your doctor. You may need to find a new doctor if you're moving far away. Like get all that ahead of time so that you don't have disruptions in that, okay? Let's see. And then BG says, would your recommendations be the same for someone with the TBI? I think absolutely. I think a lot of these tips would be helpful for anyone, to be honest. And if you have a TBI, then yes, you may have memory issues. I had a friend who suffered from a horrible, horrible concussion. And for at least a year, she had to rely so heavily on writing everything down or she would completely forget to do it. So she found ways to get around that. And one of those things was massive list making and post-it notes everywhere. TBI is a total brain injury, Liz. Yeah. Okay. The last category, you guys, is kindness, being kind to yourself. Okay. Really important that you give yourself kindness and grace. You might look around at other students and assume they're having an easier time and that everything is more challenging for you. And there will be some things that are challenging for you, but honestly, you have a lot of advantages. People with ADHD in general, fabulous, creative problem solvers that can think on their feet. That is one of the best qualities as a bedside nurse that you could ever have. So I want you to recognize your strengths and not get bogged down in what you might perceive as challenges or other people having things easier. Okay, so give yourself a massive pat on the back with that, okay? Exercise has been shown to be really helpful for students with ADHD, so make the time to do that, even if it's just very short periods. Do some kind of physical movement and try to aim for that every day. And then making that self care part of your plan, like put it in your planner so that it gets done, right? What gets written down gets done. Okay, so I'm going to take all this and put it on the website. I'll try to do that this weekend, you guys. I've got a bunch of other stuff I'm recording about. I'm trying to record about 20 study sesh episodes this weekend for those of you that are in study sesh, making a whole bunch of new content for that. But if I can get all of that done, I will get this up onto the website this weekend. If not, it will be next week. Okay. So tomorrow, everyone, we are talking about your significant other, your partner, and sometimes they don't get it, right? We're going to talk about getting them on board with nursing school, because when you go to nursing school, guess what? So does everybody else in the family. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. Let me see if I can just quickly tell you what time that is. Tomorrow at 9:30. So I did get my call shift covered. So I was saying yesterday, I'm not sure if tomorrow will happen if I get called in, but a nice person took my call shift, so I don't have to go in tomorrow. So I will see you at 9:30 for that. Okay. And then to answer your question, no, she was not a nurse. She ran a nonprofit or something like that. Okay. Okay, Lexi, I'm so glad that that was helpful for you. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad that helps you feel like you've got a starting point. Okay, everyone, I will see you tomorrow.